The R&D2 here, and today I have a story. This story is about the Nintendo 64, and this story begins in 1995. Wait a minute, I can hear you through the screen. The Nintendo 64 wasn't even released in 1995. Ah, you would be correct. But Killer Instinct Arcade was released in 1994. It was running what was purportedly the Ultra 64 hardware. The game touted it would be available for your home in 1995. We later found out that the arcade hardware and what made it into the console were radically different things. That's for another video. I was sold on the Ultra 64 the moment I laid eyes on the video game Killer Instinct. The sounds, the music, the graphics. I didn't care what they were using. It was amazing. When the Nintendo 64 was released in 1996, they were very difficult to find.
It's the new Nintendo 64. So what's the big deal, and why is Toys R Us already sold out? We have the answers.
This Santa Monica Toys R Us store sold out in 15 minutes.
Had the largest shipment available to the public, and before noon, they were sold out.
This is going to be the system for the year, and it's obviously going to be one of those high-demand things. It's going to be extremely difficult to get a hold of.
These guys are looking for a Turbo Man? A gentleman dog, yes.
Through some luck, some friends, and all of our savings, my brothers and I received a package the day after Christmas 1996 containing our very own Nintendo 64. I followed the details of the N64 through magazines and the emerging internet closely. One day in the back of a non-corporate sponsored gaming magazine, I saw an advertisement. It was for a device that let you back up N64 games to zip disks. It showed two names, Mr. Backup and Z64. It was an identity crisis with a $399 price tag.
Shut up and take my money.
I wanted it. But the price was way too steep for a 17-year-old me. Then there were a couple of high-profile lawsuits against the companies that made backup devices for the N64. This device was considered banned. Customs was instructed not to allow it through. So I never got it. Fast forward 10 years. I'm working in information technology, and I've got some wonderful people on my team. While working, we're just having a casual conversation about video games. But I spoke passionately about the Nintendo 64 and this really cool backup device that used zip disks. I had seen it in a magazine, and I had since seen it online, but I was still unable to obtain this holy grail of N64 history. I had no idea another coworker was listening to me drone on and on about how cool this thing must have been, and how much I really wanted to be hands-on with one, even if just for a few minutes. He chimed in, "Hey, I think I've got one of those. Let me get into my storage and dig it out, and I'll bring it in." I really didn't know what to think, but he was a man of his word. A few days later, he showed up with Mr. Backup, Z64, whatever you want to call it, in one hand, and a collection of zip disks in the other. He explained that when it was released, he lived in Hong Kong, so he was able to get one in a store off the shelf. He wasn't even sure if it still worked, but he handed it to me and told me to give it a go. I, of course, got it working that night, and I was overwhelmed. I played with it for about a week, and I had a ton of fun. I cleaned it up, boxed it up, and got it ready to return to the owner. I brought it back to work, and when I mentioned I had it all packed up in a box ready, he told me to keep it. He told me I should be the caretaker of it. And I couldn't thank him enough. This was a grail. This was an item that I had wanted for so long, and now it was mine. Years went by, and I ended up storing all my possessions for about 6 years. Mr. Backup remained packed away, but not forgotten for an additional 4 years. After 10 years in storage, in late 2024, I embarked on a personal journey to get my Nintendo 64 units, controllers, and all the accessories I own back into working order. With the widespread proliferation of the Summer Cart 64, I decided to get out Mr. Backup, and I was intending to make a video on the old technology versus the new technology. Unfortunately, I was met with this. a single black line. Knowing the Mr. Backup was a 386 computer system on chip, or SoC, I was comfortable opening it up. I reseated the RAM, checked for loose solder connections, and reseated the BIOS. I tried the unit again. Nothing. Just the single black line. I dug deep and I summoned all my Google foo. I did find a few posts on random websites, blogs, and a couple old Reddit posts. Most had failed in the same way, a single black line, and nothing else. More worrying, none of the posts had any follow-up. No discussion on a fix? Nothing. I'm pretty good with old computers, so I tried adjusting the voltages, checking the voltages on the board, checked for any malfunctions and passive components on the board, and everything seems to check out fine. So why the black line?
I don't get it. I don't get it.
I looked into the chip that powers the device, the 386 system on chip. Through their reference pages, I was able to find some information regarding the BIOS of Mr. Backup. To the best of my research, what I am seeing is a black line output because there is no information to process. The BIOS chip has most likely stopped working. There are no instructions to process, which means the chip most likely has failed. This is very early in the boot process, so it's nearly instant after you power on the device. A new chip may be required because the original may have malfunctioned completely. Sourcing the correct 4 megabyte chip was difficult. They are no longer in production. There are plenty of Chinese knockoffs, but I did find 2 that I do believe are originals. They are compatible, but not identical. One was a quote working pull, and the other one was a quote new old stock chip. The missing piece of the puzzle is how to program that chip. I have the chip, I've got the file, but I've got no way to program it. After a bit of research, I found the programming units. They go from $40 to $4,000. Ones that seem to be compatible with what I'm trying to do start at about $140. That is a lot for a one-time use thing. What happens next? Well, that all depends on you. I need to call on you, the viewer, the internet, the YouTube. I have a device that is rare and banned for the Nintendo 64. This is an amazing piece of history. I believe this thing can be resurrected, but I'm going to need some help. If you know how to program DIP32 and PLCC32 chips, I've put the model number of the chip I'm trying to program in the description below. Please write a comment or drop me an email at the email address on the screen.